Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game podcast from the folks over here at That Nerdy Site. Today is Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. I am one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson, and joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing today, Trev?
Doing all right. Hanging in there. We had to postpone a day because I got knocked on my ass yesterday from what might have been a side effect from a vaccine shot. I don't know. If so, it was like a week delayed, but feeling better today. So ready to talk about some video game stuff.
Yes. We're doing a special episode of News You Care About today because it's a weird week in video games. Not a lot of news happening because we want to. It's our show. We can do whatever we want.
We've just kind of given up on this being like a news of the week show
for
the last couple weeks, really.
Yeah, it's been. Look, here's the thing. This is not the heavy-hitting news time period of the year.
We can bring it back around for those that were invested in our dice bets last week.
Yes.
We tied, so neither of us owes the other one dominoes.
The least dramatic outcome possible happened in that bet. Neither one of us got any dominoes last week, unfortunately, so the world was sadder for that.
But shout out to Hades. And shout out to, I believe... of the 23 awards, I believe we basically both got 15 predictions right, is what it came down to.
That's not bad. Especially considering there were 3 or 4 there that we were guessing in the dark on, basically.
Yeah.
Shout out to Best Racing Game and Best Mobile, truthfully.
Well, Best Racing Game I got, neither of us got Best Mobile.
Yeah. But yes, this week's episode of News You Care About, we are doing a special fun little project that Trevor brought on board that I loved, which is the best movie, film adaptations of video games / little dash in there, the kind of dream movie or TV adaptations of video games that haven't been done yet or have been done but maybe poorly. Trevor, this is your topic, so I will kick it over to you first. What is your first either good example or bad example or dream game that you'd love to see made?
Well, I guess since we're kind of doing the hybrid of like what has worked as well as our dream pitches and stuff, I'll save my pitch for later and touch on like what has worked and an example that immediately comes to mind in that, because obviously we this is all spawning really off of the Mortal Kombat movie just coming out this last week and being like #1 at the box office, being really dumb fun. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on that, you can go listen to this week's That Nerdy Site show where me and Cam kind of do a spoiler cast of it. But we don't get too much on the movie side of things that work. There's been like probably, count on one hand.
A handful, right?
The like real hits. But the thing that jumps to mind immediately is actually the Castlevania series on Netflix. I've really only watched the first season of it, but like
same.
It was phenomenal in its animation and the fact that it was much more short form and like 20-30 minute episodes and like 4 episodes in that first season, I think, really made it like stand out and pop, and it had like a style to it, and it respected like the lore of Castlevania, and I think it did a really good job of like focusing in and honing in on those characters.
Yeah, that's a great pull. The first season of Castlevania, which is the only one I've seen as well, to be fair, is fantastic. It's so good, and it was cool for me too because that came out back when I was still in Missouri, and I watched it with a buddy of mine who is a huge Castlevania and just retro gaming like fan in general, right? Like he still has all of his old consoles, all the old cartridges and games. He got like an entire shelf full of them. This is the shit he loves, right? And so, as someone who's played hours, not more than 10 of all the Castlevania combined, but understands its importance in video games and understands kind of just stylistically how cool of a series it is. It was really cool to see it from his perspective as well, someone who was gushing and freaking out and like getting excited about all these small details and all these small moments. I think Castlevania is a great one too because that is such a beautifully made TV series. Like it is so well animated. It looks so sleek, so clean. And I think one of my favorite things about it personally is that it is one that doesn't encompass the entire game all in that first season, right? Like it was a really cool discovery to be like, oh, we're not going to get to the end of this game at all
Mm-hmm.
by the time the series ends, and the way that it incorporated characters and introduced things and kind of laid the groundwork for where we were building. And then finally, I think the Castlevania series is really neat for what it does with Dracula's character.
Yeah.
I think, and really humanizing him in a way that is just harder for a 25-year-old video game, at least. God. And so, yeah, I think it really stands out for that as well.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm largely in the same boat. Whereas I've played very little of the Castlevania games. The only one I've actually played through is Symphony of the Night, and even that I only played through that 6 years ago now. So I was like very
Check
late
out
to the game
kindoffunny.com.
on any of that, any of Castlevania stuff. And I think it was like basically like right before the series came out. And so I was very well prepped for it. And then the series comes out. I'm like, I don't like, these aren't really the characters I know, because you play as Alucard in Symphony of the Night. And he gets introduced like at the very end of that first season. And it's a cool setup for, where the series is going to go from there. But yeah, I really just enjoyed it. It was a fun, it's by Ari something, I think. Ari Avkar.
Yeah.
The guy who did like the really hard, gritty like Power Rangers video and stuff like that. Like he had like a web presence of doing like these like, very adult takes on, classic things from our childhood and stuff like that. And so the fact that he got like a whole Castlevania series to work on was really cool. And I think he brought a very mature tone to it for what is ostensibly a very mature series
Very dark,
with mature themes and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it was really, really cool. And it's definitely one of those that like, I believe they're wrapping up, I think, with like season 4 or something like that. I think that
Season
was like
4, I thought,
the
was the last
finale.
one. That's what I thought I'd read.
So yeah, now
it's into a season 4 is what I'm Googling.
Yep, and it looks like that comes out in a couple weeks time here. So yeah, it's I think like once that is out, I'll basically sit down and just like binge through the whole thing over a weekend or something like that, and just have a good time with it.
I think that Castlevania is such a great series and world and mythology to pull from to do. Like, there can be because there's so many games now, but there's so much, I think, room for really interesting and deep adaptations of the Castlevania like saga. And I think especially going to maybe some of the earlier games that aren't as well known, right? Like Symphony of the Night is one that like I feel like everyone kind of understands. And so for them to focus on an earlier entry in the series, and for them to focus on kind of different characters, and I mean, the series, the way it handles its mature themes, I think is so well done, right? Like the opening of that series, right, with like Dracula's whole kind of like origin story is so well done and so intense and so dark, and I think so powerfully shown, right? Like, I think it gets you on such a solid footing of like what this world is and what the stakes are, and immediately shows you the like messy gray of everyone involved right out of the gate. And yeah, that's a great pull that I did not expect, Trevor. Yeah.
Adi Shankar is the producer that I was thinking of. I think he directs it, or he developed it. And he had done that like Power / Rangers, as well as like he'd worked on Dread and stuff like that. So yeah, really cool. Just like in your face, kind of like let's mess up some of this stuff from our childhood.
That's a great pull. For me, pivoting it to my side, one that I think works. I already talked to Trevor about this off air, so he's gonna have to hear it again. Which is Sonic, right? Like it's a recent one. I think it's one that a lot of people would kind of point to, but I think that movie was, such stupid fun. There's a very, very, very early That Nerdy Site Show podcast, I think, indeed, about spoilercast about a few of us from Austin all watching that together. If you want to dive back into the treasure chest for that one, but yeah, I think it's great, right? I think it is a movie, like I kind of told to Trev, that I think really gets Sonic and really gets that world, and why people like me, people like Tim Geddes, Nabashin, who's playing through like all the games, why they love that series so much, right? And it's not that it's the best platformer ever. It's not that it like controls immaculately well all the time. It's that it's got so much fun to it, right? Like it's such a cool idea, full of colors and flash and style and kind of this half-cocked, mischievous smile constantly on their face. And I think the Sonic movie totally gets it. I think it totally nails who that character is and what that world feels like. And I think, it is a movie that, for me at least, just leaves you smiling when you walk out of the theater and leaves you having fun. It's a great movie if you have kids for. It just, I think, understands its characters so well. And I think a recurring theme, if we dabble into like the movies that don't work, is that they just so clearly didn't understand who these characters were and like how that world is supposed to like act in a movie setting, right? Like they just didn't get it. And Sonic definitely gets who Sonic the Hedgehog is and who, like, it's that thing of, like, it's hard to imagine who could have been Dr. Robotnik, and then you see Jim Carrey, and it's like, oh, like, it could have been no other person than this. Like, he's so just, like, outlandish and over the top and ridiculous, and, like, that's who this character would have to be in real life. But, yeah, I just, and then James Marsden, I mean, come on, he's great. We love him. So, yeah, Sonic, to me, is one that is, like, such a classic modern example of this is how you should do a video game movie, just like especially for that kind of character. Make it fun, like make it a ton to just enjoy and sit down and soak it up and laugh and smile, and I think Sonic totally does that.
Yeah, I agree. I had a great time with Sonic. It was a ton of fun. I'm pretty sure Cam and I saw it together here in Phoenix when
nice.
You guys were seeing it in Austin. Yeah, it's a movie that obviously so easily could have gone wrong, from like the very first things of Sonic that we saw, of course. And as much as I hate the precedent that gets set from like the backlash leading to them like redesigning the character, it all worked out for the best for the film. But like, Ben Schwartz as Sonic, I think, is inspired casting, and he's just a ton of fun. And it was especially interesting because I feel like that was the same time I was watching the DuckTales show, the new DuckTales show for the first time, and he's one of the triplets in DuckTales as well. He's a very fun voice actor. As somebody who knew him first from Parks and Rec, seeing him kind of like in these kinds of roles as Sonic, just having a ton of fun, was great. And then it's an inspired casting choice to have Jim Carrey as Robotnik, but it could have easily gone the other way. If not totally. 90s Jim Carrey showed up, that would have been a very different movie, I feel like. But the fact that he just leaned full into like, his liar, liar, Ace Ventura wackiness really, I think, helped the energy of that movie. And yeah, James Marsden is always a delight, despite him, always being the put upon kind of sidekicky, character and stuff. He's just, like, he played a great straight man to a CGI Sonic and to, in the maybe one or two scenes he has against Jim Carrey. He was a great straight man to that. So, I absolutely great. And it peppers in enough fan servicey things that is going to be like real fun for fans of the series without like feeling intrusive, I guess. But I would say like the one thing I wish had been more in there, because as somebody who played Sonic growing up, I know the music of Sonic really well, especially like those first games, and I wish they had leaned more into the music of the games than they did. Like in the same way, the Mortal Kombat that just came out, like Mortal Kombat, one of the things that lacks this latest rendition is the music just doesn't hit as hard as the 95 Mortal Kombat music did. And the one or two times they lean into it is like, oh yeah, this is really cool. But then they like pull it back, or it's like changed enough that it just doesn't have the same magic or the same impact. And so I feel like, if I had heard some more of those classic Sonic themes in Sonic the Hedgehog, it would have just like bumped the movie up even that much higher.
Yeah. I think it's a particularly good point to make about Jim Carrey, right? I think both in terms of him deciding to play it like that, and also the decision to even bring him on board, right? Because I think the easy temptation is for them to bring on generic bad guy template number 5 who's just going to play Robotnik almost too seriously, who is going to try to play him as like a big, tough, like scary baddie. And I don't think that works. Like, I think one of the things that Carrey nails is this guy's totally fucking nuts. Like, he's totally ridiculous. Like, he's not like within like the organizational structure of anything. Like, let's very quickly point out that this guy's bonkers mad. And is just going to kind of lose his marbles more and more throughout the movie in really fun and innovative and great ways, while also showing that, yeah, he is also super smart, though. And I think the image that always sticks out to me is like him dancing around, building like a death trap basically for Sonic while like the music is playing in the background, and him just like having a great time. I think nails that character so well, right? Like, I think it was such a good role for Jim Carrey to kind of be like, yeah, I'm just going to be like the 90s Jim Carrey and have fun with it and like not play it too seriously, not try too hard, just like enjoy this character who's like so clearly a good fit for what he kind of does in his comedic stylings. And then another thing I wanted to give a shout out to is the way the movie incorporates like the rings, I think is super smart and super clever, and a really good way to do that where it makes sense with what the movie's trying to do while also bringing in this, weird gimmick that the games have. Like, here, he's collecting rings, and like now it has a purpose to it, and there's a reasoning behind it. Like, even the dumb things of Sonic video games in the movie add some sort of reason why they exist, and pretty cool reasons why they exist in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I even like, even if they hadn't gone with Jim Carrey, I appreciated that they didn't go with I appreciate that they didn't force Jim Carrey into the like classic Robotnik look of like big fat guy with, the, like, obviously he gets the outlandish mustache by the end and stuff, but the fact that like he isn't that throughout the rest of the movie, or he isn't the big guy. Mm-hmm. Like the only other person that comes to mind that I could have seen in that role would have been like a Jack Black, and that would have been a much more traditional casting of Robotnik. And I think Jack Black could have, also killed it and knocked it out of the park.
Had fun with it, yeah.
But yeah, the fact that they didn't like, they weren't beholden to that, and they were just like, hey, like, we want crazy Jim Carrey, and we're gonna get crazy Jim Carrey, and he's gonna come do this and steal a few scenes. And have some fun, just dancing in a CGI holographic room or whatever.
Trevor, next thing you want to give a shout out to, or game you want to pitch? It's up to you. You take it either direction.
I mean, I will. It's interesting because like the best examples I think we've had are all in recent years. Like, we've had many years of garbage beforehand. But Detective Pikachu is another one that I would absolutely.
I haven't seen Detective Pikachu. That's a good one.
It very much, and I think it's weird because it's not what people thought like a solid live action Pokemon movie was going to be, especially when like I remember like articles of Detective Pikachu getting introduced and like it being the Japanese version, and Pikachu just sounds very old, grizzled, and like it started this meme of like Danny DeVito is going to be Detective Pikachu and stuff like that. And so when it ends up being Ryan Reynolds, it's like, okay, well that's a different choice for given the kind of game lineage or whatever. But it allows this like fun body switch story that is happening just in the Pokemon universe. And so you get all these like you get like this realistic 3D, animated interpretations of all these like iconic Pokemon figures alongside a fun movie where you have basically Ryan Reynolds just being smarmy, but he's smarmy as Pikachu, and Justice Smith is kind of playing his human counterpart in there, and he's a solid kind of like wannabe trainer, like up and comer, has this kind of like this relationship that you get into and find out with the character, like basically the Detective Pikachu and Justice Smith character are looking for his dad, which was like the Pikachu partner, basically. Like the whole premise is they live in a city where Pokemon and humans like work together in tandem, and it's not like all the Pokemon live in Pokeballs or something like that. It's not what we've seen in Pokemon for the last 25 years. It's a more humanitarian kind of approach or whatever. And so like the dad detective character works with this Pokemon, with this Pikachu, and something has happened that has led them to have to kind of like the dad has gone missing, and the Pikachu now can speak to the son or whatever, and it's just a really fun approach, and I think like it's far enough removed from the like, well, we need a trainer who's going to go and do like the 8 gyms, because you could very easily make that the movie, and it's just like, okay, I know exactly those 8 beats to this story. It's going to be
montage through gyms 2 through 7.
Yeah, exactly. And that or he he falters halfway through or something like that and has to train harder and bounce back and stuff like that. And so the fact that it was like just kind of an offbeat story, let them tell this weird Pokemon story in the Pokemon universe, and you get beautiful Pokemon animation alongside it. And so it was a fun. I mean, like I remember, like especially when Sonic then came out like a year later, it was like, wow, we got like a 1-2 punch of good video game movies. Like still not great. There's still plenty of room to be had, but
improve.
Like it was fun, and especially like it was another one that great for kids especially, but like even as someone growing up, there was still so much charm and humor and heart to the movie. It was very much the Deadpoolification of Pokemon or something, in large part because Ryan Reynolds, of course.
Ryan Reynolds,
but like he is making some of those jokes and some of those commentary bits that like we now can think about as we look back on it or something like that like are going completely over kids' heads or something like that. But it was a fun like for adults and kids kind of movie. So Detective Pikachu is another one of my picks for this kind of like successes, the ones where it worked.
I think it's a great pull. Detective Pikachu is one that I haven't gotten around to checking out yet, that I know that I'll enjoy, if for no other reason than Mr. Mime. And just like the trailer scenes I've seen have been like, all right, I just want a movie with just him. Give me like the Mr. Mime spin-off movie, because that character seems so funny. And the whole premise is awesome, obviously. Like it's just one that I haven't got the chance to check out yet. I'll have to find out what it's on, and be able to coming up soon. But yeah, that's a great pull, I think, in terms of a success story.
Like I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I've seen it, but like within like 5 minutes in the movie, the main character Justice Smith is like going up against a Cubone out in the field, and Cubone notoriously is like a tragic Pokemon because it is wearing the skull of its mom, and like he has a meta joke talking about that. It's like, that's not creepy at all. No, that's perfectly fine. Like something in that vein. It's just like, yes, thank you for addressing that like head on. So it's just very fun, lighthearted, tongue in cheek. And then Mr. Mime is great. Ditto makes a recurring appearance throughout the movie in wonderful and also horrifying ways. So it's a lot of fun.
Perfect, awesome. So with that being said, I'll pitch something now. I'll give a pitch for a video game adaptation. And originally I was thinking of video games that I want to see turn into a movie, and then right before we hit the big red button to start recording, Trevor kind of mentioned, well, what about TV series that they could be as well? And I think that's where I'm going to kind of lean towards first. And maybe I'm a weird person to be asked this question too, where like I actually don't want and don't need The Last of Us to be made into a movie or TV series. I don't
too
want
bad you're
getting
it.
Yeah. I don't want or need Uncharted. And Uncharted in particular is like such a weird thing where it's like it is based off of, it's inspired by Lara Croft, which is inspired by Indiana Jones, which is inspired by B movie series from before. Like I don't need that. Or like we have the movie version of Uncharted. They're really good. And so like a lot of the big blockbuster AAA games I don't want, because those games are so good telling the stories in their way, and I don't know if it would convert the same way. But in terms of one that I think would work, in terms of one that I think would be really cool, I'm going to go towards, again, kind of a weird pick, which is I would want like a limited series, like 8 episode run, like HBO of Bully.
Okay.
Because I think out of all the Rockstar games, that's actually the one that I think would convert into a movie or TV series the best. GTA is a piss take, right? Like that, like those are just such a messy, chaotic experience. Like that's such a like integral part of those games. I feel like that it's hard to replicate that in like a story. And the stories of those games are good in some of them, but they're also so long that they'd have to be like a 5 season long or 6, 7, 8 season long thing that like that's just like too unwieldy for me. Red Dead Redemption, again, I think so much of the joy of that is being able to savor those small moments and downtime to just riding across the like vista yourself. And Red Dead 2 I don't think is that great, so I don't want anything of that. And so then we get to Bully, which I think is one that is kind of like this sleeper Rockstar game in a lot of ways, right? Like I feel like not that many people talk about it. It came at like this weird pivot time for the studio. And then also it's one that I think would work well for a larger non-game audience because your character is just kind of unambiguously like an all right person, right? Like you're not like you're not like an anti-hero, you're not a bad guy, you're just a kid trying to survive school basically. And I think you could do so many cool coming of age things with it. I think you could do so much in the framework of here's a year in the life of this school, right? And this is what it looks like. And if the series does well enough, you could pick it up, go to like year 2 or something like that. But there's so much there for a kid who has kind of been bounced around schools and has never gotten a fair shake and never gotten a fair chance. And I think they could have a lot of fun with, again, the name of the show being Bully and the fact that you're not the bully in the thing, that you're like the guy who keeps being tagged as it, but you're actually not that. You fight the bullies, you fight the cliques. And then all of the ways it could have fun with exploring the town and, you know, going to the carnival, going on like dates, all the like hidden small conversations and stuff like that. I think there's so much room for really cool like HBO or like Showtime or like one of those kind of studios, AMC maybe, Netflix, versions of Bully. And I'd want it to be live action. I wouldn't want it to be animated, but if it was, I wouldn't hate it. But like a live action Bully, I think would be such a neat idea for like what that could eventually turn into, I think, and the potential for that to really flesh out why that game is so cool and why you're missing out if you haven't played it, even though it's like a weird game to go back to now, I feel like, 'cause it's a PS2 game, and it's never really gonna get a remake, I don't think. And so I would pick Bully to get that kind of high profile TV series.
Any ideas as to like who you might cast?
I was thinking about this. The kids are all so young that like I don't even know like who are young kids nowadays, right? That are like big stars.
Yeah, like I mean, so, like the first thing I think of is probably like the kids from Stranger Things or something like that. But even they're probably getting a little too old at this point.
Right, and so like that's a good pull, right? But like otherwise, like I don't know, like I imagine the kids themselves are all for the most part going to be pretty unknown, and it would be the teachers who would be like famous people potentially, right? Like who would be like the bigger names that you could kind of get drawn into, right? Like the headmaster for sure is going to be like a big name actor who can play a good like dickish asshole, right? Like I think of like James Cromwell, right? For like the headmaster, like that kind of slender, long, kind of like bit of a like snobbish air to him, I think would be like a great headmasteress kind of role. And so I look at someone like in that vein to potentially do it. Melissa McCarthy could be like the cafeteria lady. Like someone just like this like over the top cartoonish character. I think she'd play really well. And so that's who I'd kind of look at in terms of like the cast. And then I mean like yeah, like the lawn guy, like the groundskeeper, I guess, is another fun one. Who that is just someone who is just like, when I think of like the groundskeeper for Bully, I immediately think of, I think it's that groundskeeper Willie from The Simpsons. Mm-hmm. Is that his name?
Yeah.
That's like, imagine whoever would be good for his role. It's the same character in Bully, so like it'd be that kind of actor and that kind of presence who could just be played this kind of like ridiculous, wild, you know, person on the show.
Nice. Yeah, I guess pitch for me that I kind of touched on, and really the reason I drive the conversation even to like TV is because one of my dream projects for years, and I think it's something that we're actually going to end up getting here, is or has been like a Fallout series. Like I've loved the Fallout games going back to like the original PC ones even. But then when Fallout 3 hit and like you are in DC and then Fallout New Vegas and then basically outside of Boston in Fallout 4, I think you could have a great time with like an anthology series where basically each season is, you know, you're planted in the shoes of a vault dweller in a different part of the country and you go, you know, to the landmarks around that area, be it, you know, a Vegas or like, I mean, really, like at this point, I would love to see like, you know, a Dallas-based, you know, vault dweller or something like that, and just like wandering around the basically Texas could be just like you could do a whole season on Texas, or something out in like maybe like almost stealing from like Far Cry a little bit, like take something out in Montana or the Dakotas or something that, because there's just nothing out there, wasn't ravaged too much, and so like it's a completely different world compared to you know what we see elsewhere. Or you can just kind of like plop them down in DC and see, you know, what that looks like in a series as well, because I think especially something like DC would be a ton of fun because there's always this like wonderfully like macabre undercurrent to what's going on in Fallout. Like the fact that in Fallout 3, spoilers, like you're constantly hearing about, you know, the president over the airwaves or whatever, and if you like follow the path down that route, you find out that the president is like a robot and has been for like many years or whatever, and basically has been running the quote unquote the country from like, you know, bunkers, and it's just like a wonderful like just twist on what you maybe expected going into it or something like that. So I think there's just like such a wonderful history in that series, even like the going into like the lore of it and this, you know, alternate retro future thing that is happening. It's, you know, it's all like, what is it? Like, it's imagine if instead of like really diving into like gas power or something, it just kind of stuff stayed like retro style in the 50s and yeah, it's just a very fun series that I think would have a great aesthetic and design behind it, but and then you can just have some fun stories and like the way those games are built. There's so many fun side missions that don't even like apply to like the standard plot or whatever. So you could just like have a fun like monster of the week kind of series of like, hey, I went into this town and boom, suddenly I'm dealing with cannibals or something like that, and having to fight them off or something. I just think there's so much like fun, twisted humor in there that I think would really speak to me in a really cool way.
I think a good series for them to look at too is The Walking Dead, right? In terms of, you know, having that season-long arc, but getting kind of sidetracked on all the things like en route, right? And also because The Walking Dead was wildly successful, I'm sure they would gladly take that. But I think that's one that, for a lot of reasons, to me, kind of draws to. They could kind of look at what that did and what worked and what didn't work with Walking Dead, and kind of draw inspiration from that. I think Fallout's a great one. I in particular like the anthology idea. I think is really neat. And kind of points me towards one that I kept going back and forth on if I wanted to give like my pitch for, but I'm just gonna do it because why not? Which is Persona. I would love a TV series of Persona because the entire season would still be shorter than the video game, by like times 10, and so I get the whole thing done in just like such a condensed version and dose. And I don't have to play the parts I don't enjoy playing. And so I also think it's a video game that's so obviously ripe for like long form like TV storytelling, where you can get like an entire episode where like nothing really happens in terms of moving the plot forward or in terms of having any sort of like dungeon fight kind of thing. And instead it is just like all of you are at like a coffee shop together, or like at school together, or walking around, or doing any things kind of things, and just like a small episode of like, you just like bonding. I think a TV series could do so well, right? That helps set up why these relationships matter, and why you're kind of all banding together, and why you're all fighting towards this common purpose, and flesh out the parts of the story that I've always found the most interesting, right? Like I've been on the record for years saying the weakest parts of Persona games are the parts where I'm messing around with personas and doing all this shit in a dungeon. That's not what brings me forward, right? And so to get a TV series that could, I think, remove the part of that I don't enjoy in terms of playing, but keep the visually excited and interesting parts of it, and also then allow more room to breathe for the like day-to-day small beat moments of the story, I think is something that I find really appealing, right? Like if I could just like if I could just get the story in a smaller dose, I think Persona, and like Persona also just like, it's essentially an anime, so like they're already like, it's not even that hard of a jump to get to, this is a TV series now.
There are a few actually already out there. Yeah.
I was going to assume, right? And so I think it's one for me that like would make that a much more easily digestible kind of piece of content to consume, would be my pick.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure there is. I think Persona 4 has an anime, and then I think Persona 5 does as well now.
I don't know those ones.
But yeah, it's it's very much absolutely kind of a natural fit, I think, for that, and especially you're like, basically it would take out a lot of the dungeon crawling, and it would also take out the days where you're sitting in class and you're basically being quizzed on random things. So yeah, I think focusing in on like the story and like the big overarching plot moments, I think would be a solid kind of focal point there of a Persona show. One last pitch that I'll bring up that is actually something I pitched back when I was doing like daily videos on Trevor Trove. I pitched at one point a Contra movie, and I don't remember. I feel like I pitched it before Jumanji came out, I think.
That's rad.
And I'm annoyed now because Jumanji basically took like one of the whole premises, because it was so Contra is, and it was like digging into, well, that like in the real history of Contra, and especially like the original Contra, it's like they're Australia or they're New Zealand or something like that. They're somewhere in like the Australian region, and so basically there's going to be two not brothers, but it was going to be a commander and like his like second in command, and I basically pitched it as Hugh Jackman and Chris Hemsworth to just go in and basically be like super muscly, shooting up shit and aliens and stuff like that. But they were going to like unlock the Konami code effectively that gives them 30 lives, and it was going to be it was in the same way that Jumanji ends up doing it, where it's like they get these tattoos on their wrists. In Jumanji, it's basically just like 3 lines, and when they die, one of them disappears, and it's a very easy to understand, like, okay, apparently I only have 2 lives left. It would be 30 lives split between them, and their like tattoos are just kind of constantly changing, and then it would get down to like basically like they run out of lives, and one of them has to sacrifice for the other to kind of like see the mission through or whatever like that. But it was my kind of tongue-in-cheek way of like incorporating this like arguably the most iconic thing of Contra in the Konami code, and incorporating that into the movie and the story in a real way, where like they lose a couple lives because they don't realize what's going on, and that they can keep coming back, and then they start to realize that their tattoo is changing or something like that, and they realize that it's maybe counting down or something like that, and then like when 30 lives are up and the tattoo just disappears, they realize, oh, I think that's it. I think like we gotta be careful from here on out. And so it was just a fun like random pitch I had. I think like one of those, I was laying in bed late one night and just like that idea just came to like mind as fleshed out as that. Basically, I was like,
Yeah.
that's something I'm gonna put into a video. So so I revive it here and bring it up here. And again, like I'm pretty sure it was before Jumanji basically took that idea with the with the tattoos to show the lives, but it's something that like when they did, I was like, haha, it could work, haha, absolutely. So get a couple of big hunky superstars and turn it into a thing.
I think it's a great pitch. I would watch the shit. It's got very Terminator vibes to me too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And like Day After Tomorrow or whatever they ended up changing the name of that movie to, Die Another Day or whatever. Like the Tom Cruise one.
Yeah, it's not Die Another Day because that's a Bond movie. Like Live, Die, Repeat. That's what it was.
Yeah. And those two kind of combined together. So I think that sounds super rad. Yeah, it's a great final shout out, Trevor. Damn. And then Jumanji already did it too, so we know it works.
Yeah, exactly. That's also
perfect.
like,
yeah, I love
also
that.
shout out to Jumanji, which isn't, it technically isn't a video game movie or whatever, but like arguably is up there among the best video game movies.
You also gave me my final idea, my final pitch, like I hadn't been thinking of, but then I was like, I'm just gonna do it, and continuing my theme of doing like kind of offbeat ones. My final shout out, I guess the final shout out of the episode is going to be for Area 51, the video game to be turned into a movie, both because it's got like, for me, I'm looking at something like Doom with like The Rock Within, like the 2005 one, which wasn't great, but I don't think it was as bad as everyone else. Like I really enjoyed it for being like, yeah, it's basically like a dumb 80s action movie in 2005. And so Area 51 would be kind of like that, but also super heightened on like the horror vibes as well, right? Because like a big part of that game for me, again, as I've talked about before, is that was like one of the scariest games me and like my childhood best friend Brandon had played at the time. We were like freaked out by it, right? And I think in particular the game's usage of like lighting and darkness and the movie doing something like that as well, where like it starts off and you got like it's Predator. You have like the gang of like super buff jack dudes and they walk in and they're aliens now, and it goes from Predator to Alien or Aliens, effectively, in terms of like being much more kind of a horror film. And I think it could really work, right? And like I think they could do really fun things in terms of like sci-fi horror, alien creatures, like discovering, I'm sure, governmental conspiracies and all that kind of stuff that, because it also allowed me to see what happens at the end of the game. I have no idea. And so I think it's one that is just so ripe for like really cool things. Because like the story of Area 51, from what I remember, was like really neat and really cool. And so like I would love to see that happen. And like, because Resident Evil I thought about, but like that series, I don't know how you bring it back from like the 15 Resident Evil movies, right? Like I feel like that's like so ingrained in pop culture now of like this is what this is from a movie perspective that it's harder, and it will need a break. So it's like, what's a good horror one? And I think stuff like Outlast and Slender Man, all these kind of things, they're not fun horror in the way that I want. And so I was like, Area 51 is like a fun horror experience where it's like it'll kind of switch back and forth between these like two iconic 80s series in my mind of Predator and Alien. And I think it could actually work pretty well, right? Like, I'd get someone like Carl Urban in the movie, right? Like, get someone who's not The Rock but is like The Rock, like Terry Crews, right, to be one of the guys, and like, I think fill up the cast like that, and I think that movie could actually work pretty well and be a lot of fun to watch. And if they really like lean into the horror, be like a terrifying Alien-esque experience.
Nice. Yeah. It's the one question I would have is, I guess, what would make, like, since I obviously I don't know the game as well as you do, like, what is the game element that like makes it a video game movie instead of just a movie about Area 51, which is a story rife with
they're
sci-fi.
Adapting the story from the game. I don't know. Like, okay. It'd be because it's a first-person shooter, I think, and even that I guess I'm kind of hazy on, but yeah, I think it's first-person shooter. And so I mean, you can like, if you want, you can do cool things like the 2005 Doom did, where like it briefly shifted to like a first-person camera mode, which was awesome. Shout out to like, dude, that in 2000 and like whatever blew my mind. I was like, I've never seen filmmaking like this before. It could do stuff like that, right? It can like have like, the little green alien, not green, little gray alien man, right? Like be the thing, right? Like one of the like visual images that's like burned into my mind from the game is, and it's like pretty far into the game, I think, where you like see the Roswell UFO. And it's in like a giant hangar, right? And like you walk out and like the camera can do like the zoom out, pan around shot kind of thing of it, and like the kind of iconic UFO crash thing, and like here it is, right? And so it can do like things like that. But like, to me it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like it's inspired by the video game Area 51, and then they probably take a bunch of liberties from there, and I'm okay with that. Give me a survival horror action-packed movie of that, totally down.
Cool. Nice.
That's all I got, Trevor. Anything else on your end, or you're all set?
I think I'm good.
All right, let's wrap it up then. Thank you for listening, if you've done so. You can go support us if you like what you heard, or even if you didn't, over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, like all of our wonderful patrons and supporters have. Their support means the world to us. It keeps the lights on and makes shows like this and like that D Plus show happen. Again, that is patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Go check out all the tiers, all the goals, all the yits, yats, and what's nots. And then you can also go support us by going over to any kind of podcast service around the globe, liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends, and rating and reviewing us on iTunes. It really does help get us into the rankings. And get us into more people's ears. You can also go over to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Hit the big subscribe button, hit the little bell notification, give our videos a thumbs up, have them in the background while you're working on some homework. Whatever you need to do, just check it all out over there. We're doing a lot of great content on the YouTube side of things lately, if I say so myself. A lot of good Let's Plays, a lot of good videos. You can find every single podcast that we do over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. So go check all of that out as well. Also, you can go check out thatnerdysite.com as well for all the written content over there as well. You can go find Trevor at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, anything you want to shout out or plug?
I will plug the YouTube stuff. Like this, we're kind of in the middle throes of our playthrough of It Takes Two. But we are nearing the end of that, I guess. You and I have finished the game, and
we've wrapped shooting.
Yeah, those episodes will be coming out here in the next couple weeks. And then alongside those videos, we have Cam continuing his playthrough of Emily is Away 3, and I need to reach out to him and get him to shoot me over the latest video to get that uploaded. So yeah, go check out all that stuff over on the YouTube.
I will agree. You can go find me over at LeftyLogie or LeftyLoggy, LOGGY on the internet. I will also give a shout out to all the YouTube stuff. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun wrapping production on the It Takes Two one and having that all kind of roll out live. Me and Trevor have some ideas for a potential follow-up Let's Play series. And then I also am going to give a shout out over to the website itself, That Nerdy Site. Go check out all the kind of written content we have over there. I have a few different written pieces up, Eastern and Western Conference MLS predictions. Hell, go back and look at my kind of reviewing of the last decade of Game of the Year winners as well, because I had a lot of fun writing that as well. And stay tuned for whatever I do for May, in my a month at least, written post update. Otherwise, you can go find That Nerdy Site at That Nerdy Site all across the internet. Otherwise, for myself, for Trevor, for all of us here at That Nerdy Site, play your games and be good to each other.